Welcome to The Commute, a Bible study podcast designed to turn your commute into an opportunity to grow in your faith. Whether you're sure of what you believe or you're not sure what to believe, this podcast is designed to help you better understand who Jesus is, what the Bible's all about, and how that applies to your life today. I'm your host, Pastor Matt, and I'm excited to dive into this week's episode of The Commute. Well, welcome to The Commute. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kenzie.
And today we've got quite a few things that we can dig into, but we're really going to spend most of our time in Ruth. This week you're reading Matthew 10 through 14, you're reading Acts 18 through 22, Psalms, of course, and then Ruth 1 through 3, and Judges. And really, when you're thinking of Ruth and Judges, realize those things are probably happening like at the same time. So like the story of Judges, like Ruth's story is happening within probably toward the end of the story of Judges. Yeah. So what sticks out to you from the story of Ruth?
Well, there's a lot that sticks out to me in the story of Ruth, I guess. I always pay a little bit more attention when the focus of a book of the Bible is women. Just because, you know, back in those days, women were very much less esteemed than they would be today. But
yeah, and I think you make a really interesting point because too, you know, Ruth is, you know, not only is she, you know, a woman and not like, you know, it's not like Esther who, you know, is Jewish and becomes a princess, you know. Or a queen actually, but Ruth is even a Gentile. So it's another reason you wouldn't expect Ruth to have her own book of scripture. She's a Gentile, which means she's not Jewish, so she's not quote unquote supposed to be connected, they think, to the line, even though she is. But yeah, it's those couple things really make it intriguing. It's like, okay, why the book of Ruth? Like what's going on here?
Yeah, and I also just think it's one of those books that, I mean, obviously when we read scripture, sometimes we see it kind of at an arm's length away of like, okay, this is the Bible, this is a story of the Bible, but these are like real people's stories in the Bible. And especially in Ruth, you see just like right at the beginning, Ruth chapter 1, you see this family going through a lot, to say the least.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, like Naomi specifically, who is the mother-in-law of Ruth, is like experiencing this massive loss. And in the middle of all of that, she tells the two that she has left, the daughter-in-laws, to go. And like she gives a lot of solid logical reasons for that. Like, I'm never going to have any more sons that you won't be able to marry, so you should go back to your house. And then Orpah, or however you pronounce her name, Orpha.
So seriously, on my vicarage, my internship, I'm standing up and doing the reading, and I'm like, how hard is the reading? So I didn't really pre-read the reading, right?
You always got to pre-read the reading.
And I'm doing the Old Testament reading, and I'm reading through in the book of Ruth, and I come to Orpah, and I literally read through Oprah and keep going. And I was like, okay, that's not right. Everybody's like, you know, laughing, and I have to like go back through. So yeah, every time I see that name, I'm like, remember that time I said Oprah was in the Bible?
Hey, you know, maybe that connected with someone that day.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. No. So back to Ruth and Orpah.
And, you know, the Old Testament names sometimes, especially in like the genealogies, I'm just like, come on.
Yeah.
But, you know.
My pro tip is if you're ever reading scripture for church, listen to it first on the Bible app. And that's how you get all the names right.
There you go.
Listen to it through a few times and then say it with confidence.
Very true. Very true.
Also an extra tip. Nothing to do with what we're talking about here.
Hey, you know what? That's part of this. It's just a conversation, right? But Naomi tells them to leave, and then Orpah does leave, and then Ruth stays and like kind of almost takes on like I don't want to say like protector, but almost a like co-caretaker of Naomi.
Which I think too, the thing we need to point out is that's a huge step of faith for Ruth. Because what Naomi's saying is essentially like, go back where you have family, where you have a network of people that can take care of you, where it's your people. So at the very least, even if you don't have a big network of people, people aren't looking at you as like a foreigner, somebody that doesn't belong, right? Which just throughout human history has happened, right? And so, but here's Ruth. She takes this leap of faith. She's going with Naomi. She's not going to abandon Naomi, even though, you know, like legally she doesn't have to stay with Naomi. Like, you know, Naomi's sons are dead. Like there's nobody that's going to take care of them. And that's the other big thing. You've got essentially a widow who probably doesn't have any property rights. And you've got a woman that's a foreigner, and she's going with Naomi back to Naomi's people. And she's going to help take care of Naomi, but these are two people that are in an incredibly vulnerable spot to step back into this culture. And yet Ruth says that she will go. Her people will be, Naomi's people will be her people. Her God, and this is a powerful faith statement, will be her God. So Ruth is essentially saying, your God is my God. So the God of the universe, Ruth's making this big step of faith. That's my God too.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I just think like it's kind of just a big story to read. And it's very like right from the very beginning you kind of see the key theme of like selflessness and even the countercultural pieces that we so often see in scripture where we're like, wait, this person should not be here. But for some reason they are. And then, obviously, Boaz enters into the picture, and he's referred to as, like, the kinsman redeemer. And he also kind of swoops them under his wing, too. So it's like the swooping.
There's a lot of swooping and redeeming.
Ruth is a story of swooping. Yeah, but I just really love the story. I also, like you were saying with Orpah, I have a weird story of, like, you know, you go to a Christian college, right? And part of obviously you're there to get an education, but there's some people who go there to, quote unquote, find their Boaz. And
this sounds like it's coming from tangible experience.
It's not. It's really not. I ignored that part of my duty as a single female in college. But every time I see the name Boaz, now, of course, I think of little Boaz, too. And I made a joke to the Kegleys saying, I think I know their wedding hashtag when Boaz gets married. Hashtag found my Boaz. But anyways, those are just the first thoughts that come to my mind about the book of Ruth.
Well, and I think, too, I love the point that you made here. You see a lot of self-giving love. You see self-giving love, one, on the part of Ruth, who willingly goes so that, you know, Naomi's not alone and Naomi has hope for a future, even though, you know, Ruth doesn't know how she's going to be able to give that, right? But you also see the self-giving love in Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. And so what's really cool about that is, you know, there was somebody in the family that would have been charged with taking care of, you know, in this instance where all the men have died, you know, there was somebody that was charged with taking care of those within the family. And so what Naomi realizes is that Boaz is close enough relation to be that person. And so as they start to connect and Boaz, you know, kind of like, you know, lack of a better story, like falls for Ruth. And it's like, I want to redeem. What he realizes is there's somebody who's even closer. And so all the property and everything they would have owned could have gone to the person that had a closer relationship and could have been. But Boaz goes and Boaz says, no, let me take on this charge. Let me be the one that does this. And so he takes on those things and becomes the kinsman redeemer. And then the really cool thing is that God honors them and blesses them. And one of the ways you see that in scripture with children. And so Boaz and Ruth have a child who becomes the great, so Ruth essentially becomes the grandmother, great-grandmother of David.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's Luke that has the genealogies that have women in them, correct?
Yes, we need to go back.
We need to
and
figure this out.
Check that out.
There we go.
But I believe it's, I thought it was Luke. It could be Matthew. They come at it from two different standpoints. And I was talking to somebody about this Sunday, and so still yet have not looked it up.
Now's the time.
Fast. Bible trivia. We'll speed through this on the actual video.
It is not Luke.
So it is Matthew. And it's kind of, yeah. So you have verse 5 of 1, Solomon, the father of Boaz, by Rahab. So what's really interesting is, the father of Boaz by Rahab. Rahab was the prostitute that when they came in to the promised land, she saved the Jerusalem spies, and so God saved her in return. Yep. And so what's interesting is in the genealogy of Jesus, as you start to see, the Messiah promised through the Jews, for the Jews, but really for the world, right? You wouldn't expect to see a Gentile, yet you see all of a sudden Rahab is brought in the family. So you've got a woman who's not Jewish, also under sexual scandal, coming into the story of Jesus. You keep reading on, and Boaz, the father of Obed by Ruth. So you've got another Gentile and a woman that comes into the story, because generally they didn't share the mother's names in these genealogies. And then Obed by Ruth, Obed, the father of Jesse, Jesse, the father of David. So what you've got is Ruth is David's great-grandmother.
That was some good fact-checking we just did there.
Right there. And then what's really interesting is if you jump down to the birth of Solomon, it says David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah. So right there, it's also showing you just the scandal that's in Jesus' line. But what I think is so cool, whether you're reading a story of Ruth or whether you're reading through the genealogy of Matthew or you're reading through one of the epistles, what you realize is that God works through imperfect people to do his perfect things.
Absolutely.
So it's God's grace that enables God's work to happen. And so God's not looking for a perfect person. He's looking for the person that he showers with his grace. And then God uses imperfect people to do his perfect things, which I think is really cool.
Very cool indeed.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent place to
end our time.
I
would
together.
agree. So, hey, we're looking forward to connecting with you next week right here on The Commute. Just as you're tracking through these readings, look for the different ways that God's working. And as you're thinking through these stories, I would say kind of think through the fact that, even before you read, just remind yourself, these are real people who are living in a real time, a real context, meeting the real challenges of this world. And God used them and worked through them. And I think as you read the stories, it'll shed new light on the stories when you do that. So till next week, hit subscribe on YouTube. You can follow all the content. We'd love to see you on a Sunday, whether online or in person. So definitely check that out. And of course, if you need any other resources for faith or to grow in your faith, go to BethlehemChurch.live or the Bethlehem Church Live mobile app. Thanks for checking out this episode of The Commute. For more information on The Commute or to join the Commute Bible reading plan, simply download the Bethlehem Church Live mobile app or go to BethlehemChurchLive/The Commute.